Good evening. Thank you for joining me. Dan Wilson, your Kootenai County Sheriff candidate. Wherever you're joining, whether it be down in the Boise area, east into Montana, west into eastern Washington, or right here in the greatest county in the whole United States, Kootenai County, I'm glad you joined me tonight. And I have my great co-host here who happens to be my wife and the brains behind all this technology, Donna Wilson.
Oh,
almost forgot your name.
Am I speaking right now, or are you doing some other stuff?
No, go ahead.
You're confusing me. Thanks for joining us tonight. We want to let you know that if you've got a comment or a question, you can leave that in the comment section on whichever platform you're joining us. So if it's Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram.
X.
And not on X.
We're not on X.
Not live on X. And we will put those questions in the queue for Dan, so when it's time for him to answer, he will do that. Another really important thing is to share the live stream right now so that we can expand the audience and get the message out to all of your friends. And it's fun when we've got everybody participating. What are we going to be?
We're going to be talking about a whole host of things tonight. I know you're tired of me talking about the helicopter and the tribe, and we are not, unless somebody brings it up, going to talk about this. But we're going to talk about Bob and Bruce and donors from outside of the state tied into some seedy business. So you're not going to want to miss that. We're also going to talk about constitutional sheriffs. We're going to talk about the illegal invasion right here in Idaho and a whole bunch more. Make certain to send your questions in on whatever platform you happen to be viewing right now. And as always, this show is about liberty without compromise. And I say show as if it's like a regular weekly show. I guess it kind of is.
Yes.
But we are here to connect with the voters of Kootenai County and whoever listens overall to the sound of liberty.
Brock from America First joining us from Fruitland.
Brock, good to see you, man. I assume, man. Can I assume?
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
And as Donna says, if you want to know even more about me and what I stand for, what my priorities are, you can go to theidahosheriff.com. We have all sorts of resources there at your fingertips. And in fact, you can also donate to the campaign if you feel compelled, if you like the message and want to see liberty remain here in Kootenai County. We also have merchandise, so you can order a nifty hat like that. Can I say nifty?
Yep, nifty keen. There's hats, hoodies, t-shirts, different styles of hats, even a bucket hat.
Now, the primary's done, and we are going into full campaign mode, and we have several events coming up. You'll want to go to the website, Facebook, to find out what events, but currently, we have this Friday on the 7th, we have a private meet and greet in Athol. On Saturday, June 8th at 9 a.m., we have a town hall at the Spirit Lake Senior Center. I guess the Senior Center?
I think they could combine calling
town
it
hall,
community center or senior center.
So that's this coming Saturday at 9 a.m. for all of you who say that you can't make a weekday event. Sunday on the 9th at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, I will be joined on the Nino Rodriguez, Nino's Corner podcast. Looking forward to talking with Nino. It's rescheduled from an event we were supposed to have, I think, back in April. So I'm going to be in the Coeur d'Alene Cruise a couple Fridays from now. And of course, we have more private meet and greets throughout the entire month. If you want to have me come and speak with you or a group, reach out to us at info@theidahosheriff.com, and I will look forward to coming and meeting you and having great discussions about all things liberty and Kootenai County.
Sheriff Richard Mack was in town a month or so ago, and he had some pretty interesting things to share. He held a community event, a forum. He's from the founder of the
Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association.
So he came to our area and held a conference open to the public, anybody who wanted to attend. And he had some interesting things to say about Sheriff Bob Norris. Do you want to give us a little more info on that?
Well, I think the videos will probably speak for themselves, but kind of in a nutshell, Bob was not endorsed by Sheriff Mack, and it sounds like that there's a little history there possibly of being snubbed by, Bob Norris snubbing Sheriff Mack. And so I think that, we'll let the video speak.
Yeah, I thought the intro was good because the audio might be it's a little bit echoey. So but I think you'll get the idea. And this is the clip where Sheriff Richard Mack is talking about previous conversation he had with Sheriff Bob Norris and why he had come to the conclusion that he did.
Right.
And somebody sent that to Norris, and just about 4 days ago, he texted me. And the first thing I said was, I really appreciate you reaching out to me, because he finally did. It's the first time I've ever heard from him. So, but I had called him and invited him to this event. And he answered the phone, and I talked to him. And he never said he was coming, but I invited him to the event. Said you can come to both of them. You can come one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And then his text to me was, I guess you talked to this guy and you were criticizing me for not being constitutional. And would you please tell me what public policies I have that aren't constitutional? And I said, I texted me back and I said, this is going to take a long time. I don't want to do texts. So if you'll tell me when I can call you back, I will call you right at that time. I had never heard from him again. He initiated the whole thing and then didn't want to do it. And so I called him again when I got here yesterday and asked him to come to the event, and he was totally welcome, that he would have a good time, and nothing. So I have seen and heard a lot about what he does as sheriff, and no, I don't believe he's constitutional.
Can you give an example?
No, I don't want to make this about him, and I'm going to leave it at that, okay?
So he wraps up there saying, I've seen and heard a lot about what he's done as sheriff, and no, I don't think he's constitutional. Pretty powerful words.
It is coming from, again, Sheriff Richard Mack, who is no longer a sheriff, but he was a famous sheriff from Graham County, Arizona. He successfully sued the Clinton administration when they passed their Brady bill. And eventually the Supreme Court heard the case. It was brought up by not only Sheriff Mack, but a couple other sheriffs from Arizona and Sheriff Prince from Montana. Eventually that ruling stated by the majority opinion penned by Scalia that the chief law enforcement officer of the county is not required to enforce federal laws, and that there is a separation of powers, similar to what Hamilton said in Federalist 85. So that was a huge landmark ruling, reinforcing the fact that the sheriff of the county, who is the chief law enforcement officer in the county, does not have to be compelled to follow the commands of the federal government. So I think that's a pretty drastic ruling there. So I think in this next clip, we're going to talk about, is it Sheriff Max? Because I can't hear without the earphones. You'll have to cue me up.
Yeah, the next clip is Sheriff Mack went on to say that he was endorsing Dan. So we're going to let you hear his words.
Make this work, okay? And I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. Just so you know, we don't need to have a discussion. But I'm supporting someone else for Kootenai County Sheriff.
Yeah.
And his name is Dan Wilson. Anyway, I'm taking a stand, and I feel that I should do the same. That all of you should, that you should take a stand.
So that was a pretty big honor. Again, Sheriff Mack is known all over the country and parts of the world for his message of how important a constitutional sheriff is for each county to defend people's life, liberty, and property. And as the last line of defense between an out of control, unaccountable federal, state, and or county government. And of course, we saw a lot of tyranny even at the county level during COVID. And many of you lived through this as well, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. So the question is, Do you want a sheriff that truly adheres to the Bill of Rights in their entirety, doesn't just single out being pro Second Amendment, but somebody that has fidelity to all of the original 10 amendments to the Constitution known as the Bill of Rights? And I believe that I am exactly that candidate for sheriff. And obviously Sheriff Mack also believes that. So greatly appreciate Sheriff Mack's endorsement. Now, I receive a lot of feedback. Many times critics want to question how a guy like me with only 12 years of law enforcement experience and 25 years as a business owner could possibly think that he could manage the office of the sheriff. And, you know, at face value, that's kind of a legitimate question, but you have to consider that in the state of Idaho, there's only 3 things that are required to be a sheriff. And those 3 things are: you have to be a citizen of the United States, you have to be 21 years of age, and you have to reside in the county that you are running as sheriff in. So it's a pretty low bar. We have been duped for years to believe that the only individual capable of running for and being a sheriff is a career law enforcement individual. And that's just simply not the case. Now, I've been criticized that how in the world do you expect, Dan Wilson, how can you expect to run a budget as large as the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, which I believe last year was around 46 million. And this year I went to the budget proposal that Sheriff Norris's crew submitted on Monday to the Board of County Commissioners. I believe it's over 50 million this year. But here's what I would say.
So not 4 to 6 million, 46 million?
46 million.
Last year?
Yeah, to 50 million. And once again, I understand where people would have a concern because those are large numbers. But remember that in 25 years of business, I've had more than my fair share of working real budgets that I've had to devise myself and with my team, managing millions of dollars that are not taxpayer dollars. So I thought that I would play this next clip for all of you doubters out there who are just adamant that Bob Norris, current sheriff of Kootenai County, sits down at his laptop and comes up with his budget yearly to present to the Board of County Commissioners. He's very, very involved. And I want you guys to look at this Board of County Commissioner budget submittal meeting that just took place 3 days ago, or I guess it would be 2 days ago. Take a look.
Before we proceed with our FY25 budget highlights, I'd like to bring forward to you the thought process of us putting together our budget. This year, we worked towards ensuring that we had what we needed to go forward to be most effective, efficient, and safe in providing services to the community.
In the clip prior
as we
to
go
that,
through these highlights,
Bob Norris
Stephanie
is introduced by
will
County
proceed
Commissioner
through. We have our
Duncan,
command staff.
and he immediately defers the submission of the budget and discussions to his undersheriff, Brett Nelson, who's a nice guy, was only, as far as I can tell, a corporal, never an actual supervisor, but he defers the budget process to Brett Nelson and the sheriff budget officer, Stephanie. And so, look, the hard truth is that in many agencies, the sheriff does not actually touch a lot of the budget himself. He's obviously going to be monitoring it, but as far as submitting it and figuring out from all of his departments exactly what he's going to submit to the Board of County Commissioners is done by a team. Now, in the clip that was just playing, Stephanie, the budget officer, will even refer to the captains and the lieutenants to answer budget-specific questions regarding line items and other things. So I just want to reassure all of you doubters out there that even Bob Norris himself probably doesn't even understand what a P&L statement is.
Yeah.
What budget is. But anyway, I digress. So it's always important, though, to ask these hard questions, and I am ready to answer any questions that you might have. If you have a question, drop them in, and I'll be sure to answer those questions. Hard, easy. I got thick skin. Just try to keep it between the lanes.
U.S. government is providing your county with military grade equipment. How do we know that this will not be used like the ATF attack in Arizona against the family of the airport executive and his family?
Yeah. Great question. I think that we always have to walk a fine line between making certain that we can have good equipment for law enforcement in order to execute their duties. But I'm with you. I become very concerned when we start seeing MRAPs and a lot of the surplus big equipment coming in that are designed for war being used for the people, because eventually that equipment could, if in the wrong hands, be turned against the people. Now, in law enforcement, whether it's the sheriff's office or police, we do have SWAT teams, and each of those SWAT teams usually have armored vehicles. They might be a Bearcat or they might be an ice cream truck. They always look like the ambulances that are armored up. And there is legitimacy to those. There's legitimacy also to our officers and deputies having long guns and other weapons at their disposal. But yes, I agree with you. I think that we need to be very, very careful on what we're receiving, not only because of an optics standpoint, but also because of a maintenance standpoint and how much it costs. It costs a lot of money. I've got an old Ford pickup truck that I love to drive once or twice a year, and it costs a lot of money to sit in that garage and not get driven. So my stance would be that we'd be very selective, and we don't need big personnel carriers like were used to combat IEDs in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Another question from Instagram. My brother was asking about the primary, which just happened last week.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know. And he thought the other sheriff had won. And I said, I don't know. Or are you still running?
The other sheriff.
The other sheriff. Not the other
Not
sheriff.
the Idaho sheriff. Yeah, great question. So we had a primary May 21. So that was about 2 weeks ago. And that was for political parties that had multiple candidates running for that party to decide by majority of vote who is going to advance from the primary as the party's nominee. So in this case, the Republicans chose Bob Norris. I, of course, am running as an independent right before the deadline for filing with the county clerk in Kootenai County. I made the hard decision, but I'm glad I made that decision to run as an independent. So that is why, yes, there was a primary, but the general election is in November. And Bob and I, we are going to tango all the way to November. And Bob should probably start looking for his retirement gig, would be my guess.
Talk to me about the value of being independent as the county sheriff. Why, in a lot of ways, it makes more sense to be a nonpartisan type of position as you're providing equal protection to people, no matter their beliefs and ideologies.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes the same way with judges. I believe that there should be, in law enforcement in general, unaffiliated, because being the sheriff, chief law enforcement officer of the county, it's a lonely job, but you also are really walking a fine line, because nobody receives impartial treatment, specialty treatment. A sheriff should be able to walk in despite, like, for example, my worldview, which is extremely conservative. I take that worldview and compartmentalize it as I am ensuring that every person that my deputies and or myself come into contact with from a law enforcement standpoint, whether it's an investigation, whether it's a detention, whether it's an arrest, that those people are treated equally under the law, and that nobody gets any worse treatment nor anybody get better treatment. And so I think as an independent, I'm leaning now towards the idea that the sheriff should be an independent. Now, it doesn't work because we have this partisan politics, which has destroyed the country. And some of the founders were definitely not in favor of this two-party system. Yet here we are. Now, disclaimer, I have, prior to running as an independent, I've been a Republican my entire life, and I strongly align with the Republican platform in Idaho. In fact, I think that if you compare my responses to the KCRCC vetting questionnaire that was sent out to both Bob and I, and of course we have the results and the comparisons on the idahosheriff.com, without a doubt, Dan Wilson is the most conservative and adheres closely to the Republican Party and can actually, hey, Bob, articulate exactly what a conservative is. So anyway.
Does that mean, though, that you do your job with a bias when it comes to upholding the law for somebody who believes and behaves very differently than you do?
Yeah, my bias is always going to be true to the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. I don't have to like the fact that you and I have an opposite worldview, but we have these guarantees: the right to religion, to practice whatever religion that you want, to say what you want. Sometimes people on the left, and I'm apparently called on the right. I don't know where we got these terms, but I'm extremely conservative. There's a lot of people on the left that would really, really hate me. But because I so greatly respect and love the Bill of Rights, it will be articulated and it will be known throughout the entire sheriff's office. You will put your politics aside. You will use common sense. You will use courtesy and respect towards everyone, and everyone will receive equal protection under the law, period.
I think that also is a reflection of a sheriff's office or department where favors are also not happening on the inside for who stands on what side. Yeah. Another question from Tony on Instagram, and he thanked you, by the way, for answering the first. As chief law enforcement officer, how do you ensure that the government agencies like FBI, ATF, CIA, et cetera, will seek your authorization before they execute any legal actions against county residents?
A little bit more difficult to come out with an absolute on that, but here's how it goes. By law and by, again, that Supreme Court ruling with Justice Scalia, the chief law enforcement officer of the county, the sheriff who's elected by the people to represent the people and to protect the people, has jurisdiction. He is not subservient to the federal government, not subservient to Idaho government. The sheriff is the one in control of the county. So therefore, this sheriff will have a sit down with every agency that is operating inside Kootenai County, and the ground rules will be clearly articulated by my transition team. My transition team has been assisting me in getting all of my policies and doctrines ready on how we're going to lay these out with federal law enforcement. Again, right now I'm a huge advocate, proponent rather, of federal law enforcement, because we've seen the continual abuses over and over and over and over again, especially with the FBI and the DOJ. However, we have to understand that there is still a requirement, because remember, the separation of powers, when Hamilton said, we can safely rely on the disposition of the state legislators to erect a barrier between the national government. And Scalia was citing that again in his ruling. And basically, it reminds everybody, the separation of powers is not just between the three branches of government, but it is also vertically. And in Kootenai County, I'm no more powerful than the federal government, and the federal government is no more powerful than I am. We are all separate and independent, but we are accountable to each other. So there will be times where we will have conversations, but they will be put on notice the very first time you're ever caught, or any of your agents, doing anything to defile my people, to trample on their constitutional rights without due process. There will be consequences.
I'm going to put a question out while Dan's moving on to another topic here, but wondering if any of you who are joining us tonight have ever been on the receiving end of a government agency or even a local government organization overstepping their bounds. Right. I'm really curious to hear back from any of you if you've had personal experience with that. So just let us know that in the comment section. Even as we continue forward, we can continue that, come back to that discussion.
That one, I'm really curious, because I believe that there are many of you out there, especially in the state of Idaho, that have been dealing with an out of control, unaccountable bureaucrat in some government office. And it's a real thing. It's the fourth branch of government. It's the administrative branch. And they're not elected by the people, but they are tyrants and bureaucrats by and large. So I welcome this discussion. In fact, hopefully by the answers we get, we can actually make a pretty large presentation at one of our future live events to specifically talk about. And I want to share with you all what I've been dealing with when it comes to an Idaho state government that I believe is absolutely out of control and nowhere in the spirit of the founders to life, liberty, and property. So how many of you live in Boise? If you live in Boise, have you noticed Theo Wold put out a video not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, we played it again, about what it looked to be invaders that have entered into Boise and were just dropped off at a strip mall. And it's got the internet buzzing pretty heavily with what is understood to be finally proof that the invaders are here in Idaho. Now, we know by good citizens right here in Kootenai County that they have also seen this invasion. And current Sheriff Bob Norris doesn't really think it's a problem. And, he's had 4 years, but he hasn't really put any policies in place or programs like a citizens posse, which could help combat some of these issues. So if we got that video up, I'd like to play that. And it's a brief 15-second video. Let me know when you got that up there.
Yeah,
And we'll
I might play it here a
Play it
couple of times just because it is short.
So I am really tired of public officials belittling citizens who actually see something. The citizens that I'm talking about are right here, not only in Kootenai County, but in Ada County, Canyon County, wherever else through Idaho. We have watched for the past 4 years the illegal invasion of this country to the tunes of millions. I think conservatively 12 million, but I'm positive we're closer to 20 million. And we know this is happening. And somehow we are supposed to believe that these invaders, which also include a heavy population of military-aged males from Africa and the Middle East. We have seen this firsthand. You can go to the idahosheriff.com and take a look at our border invasion video where Donna and I, along with Cade Lamb, went down to the unsecured Arizona border to look at what was going on. But back to the topic at hand, we have seen what's going on. And so would it not seem to reason, would it not be reasonable to believe that when people here locally or in Boise are seeing these buses pulling up, that people jump out that are obviously not from the United States and aren't speaking English, are buying suitcases, buying food, buying things that you would not normally expect seasonal workers to be doing? Why are they being called crazy? Are we supposed to believe that out of the millions that are here illegally, they're only in Florida or in California or in Chicago or New York?
Well, you had a guy arguing with you on Twitter, on X, when I think you had reshared that video that we just saw. And he just wanted to argue, and he would die on the hill and take it to his grave that there's zero proof that that's what we were looking at. And how dare you even suggest that that's what we're looking at? Well,
because we have a government that for the most part lies to us. And by the way, the federal government is at war with we the people because they are aiding and abetting. Not only are they clearing sections of the wall out to allow these invaders to come through and the cartels who are really trafficking the humans, but they're also giving these NGOs, these non-governmental organizations, billions of dollars. Everything from Catholic charities, Jewish charities, you name it. They're Lutheran charities, they're coming through and they're aiding and abetting. So why would we not believe that we truly have an invasion happening right here, right now?
Uncle Worley, Uncle Bear Worley on, on Instagram said he saw a group of 8 Hondurans at North 40 the other day. They were checking out the heavy equipment in the front of the store, maybe looking to start a business.
Interesting.
But, you know, we see these things and we've been so pre-programmed to feel guilty that we even think that. How dare you that you even second guess yourself?
Well, again, the government
pay
lies to
attention to
us.
your gut
Yeah,
instinct.
the government lies to us. And I say, listen to exactly what Don said. Listen to what your gut's saying. This is why we're running. This is why I'm running. Primarily, it was because after 2020, when we saw the attempted end run around the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, by the globalists and those in the country at the federal, at the state, and at the county level that truly bought into that your rights are suspended in the case of an emergency, which I don't know if you've been paying attention, but this past week, there's been a bunch of truth bombs dropping. And Fauci made up a lot of things. 6-foot distancing. The difference between ivermectin working or not. The dude should be arrested and charged and tried by a jury of peers from places like Idaho and Washington and Utah and Florida and Indiana and Kentucky. I know every one of you out there suffered from what this government that's at war with you did. Whether it's not being able to go to a loved one's special event, maybe a loved one or a friend committed suicide. Your children were emotionally scarred from having to wear the diapers on their face and be secluded from their peers and locked in their houses to perform schoolwork.
My mom was in hospice during that time, and we didn't know how many days she had left to live. We had her at home, but there can also be emergent situations when you have somebody on hospice who maybe is living longer than expected. She was terrified to go into the hospital. So we had to learn what we could do, basically some nursing skills so that we could uphold her wishes because we didn't know if she was there, she would die without family, die alone. And that was a very real thing in our family happening through that time.
And I know many of you have faced similar horrendous things. My oldest daughter was in Navy boot camp when the scamdemic kicked off. And her boot camp went from a traditional 8 weeks due to multiple quarantines to, I think it was 16 weeks. And at the end of it, not only were we not allowed to come and see the graduation, my understanding is they didn't even have truly a graduation ceremony. And she was kicked straight from graduating to her A school down in Texas. That was raw for me. Those of you who have had the privilege of watching your child graduate from boot camp, and that ceremony, maybe you weren't able to attend a wedding or a funeral, but we know that we have been lied to for a long time. And when they did this end run around the Constitution, and we saw the no equal protection under the law when it came to looting and burning cities down and murdering people, but you go to prison without due process because you dare to step foot on the Capitol grounds. We saw a stolen election, which it sounds like, by the way, we're going to start getting in trouble by the FBI for challenging the election. Look, 4 years ago, we saw all these things converging, and yet nothing has been done at the county level to get we the people all consolidated together as a unified front to protect this county for the next time. And they will try it again, try to take away the Bill of Rights. They want to destroy it. And they're trying to destroy it through free speech right now. They're trying to do it with the Second Amendment. And they're obviously doing it with the Fourth and the Fifth Amendment too.
Nancy joining us on Instagram. She's watching from Emmett, Idaho. Thank you for joining us. Another question. What is your stance on trespassing versus squatting on private property? That's a good one. How often, you probably went to bed last night, couldn't even sleep because you were thinking about that.
Look, this is a problem. Look, our laws originally, as intended, were to protect the people's rights, especially when it came to their life, liberty, and what? Property.
Yeah.
Laws weren't supposed to be made to punish people for doing the right thing. I've got a major problem when we have decided to allow people's personal property rights to supersede those that want to take up residence in a place that's not theirs and to stay uninvited without permission. And it's very difficult to get them out. The state that I came from, Washington, since everybody seems to freak out that I came from the state of Washington, a mere 20 miles to the west, it was a different environment over there. I mean, it was a real act to be able to remove somebody, even 10 years ago, from a residence, especially if there was a foreclosed home and somebody took up residence in it. But no, I think that unfortunately we have given too many rights to those that like to deprive others of their property. And I think that it's a huge problem. And it's not something that I would tolerate as sheriff. I would do everything within my power to hold those individuals accountable as we find the law allows us in the state of Idaho. And we need to be working with our legislators to bolster up some of these things. I know that I was at a town hall about a month ago, and I was encouraged to hear some of the legislation that they were proposing, but we still need to get across the finish line.
Where is it in, was it in New York? If you've got squatters on any of your properties, you don't dare shut off the power.
Well, look, this is Marxism, and we're seeing things that are very similar to the Bolsheviks and Mensheviks right before the Bolshevik War in Russia back around 1917. So, look, these are not new tactics; they're old, and the problem is we have too many communists or neo-Marxists who don't even really understand that they're Marxist, because they don't really understand the Bill of Rights and the Constitution and the intent of the founders. So they buy off on emotion rather than logic and history.
Now, President Trump recently had some comments back on the illegal immigration, and he's talking about solution and deportation and how it has absolutely been done before.
Right. And
he recently had made some statements on that.
Yeah, so just to recap, right now, if you're here illegally, you've crossed over illegally into the United States. That is a federal law that has been broken, and it's up to federal law enforcement generally to remove those individuals, whether it's Border Patrol or ICE. But under the current administration, which remember is at war with you and me and Congress, both Republicans and Democrats, because they haven't bothered to fix anything either. So it's not just the president, but the president controls Department of Homeland Security, and Mayorkas is not allowing ICE to deport individuals out of communities where illegals are found because of false asylum claims or other nonviolent actions. And so how do we fix this? We have millions upon millions upon millions in this country. And here's the ugly truth. It was an ugly thing. It was a crime against us in America that when this invasion occurred. Now, it's been occurring for well over 50 years, and Congress hasn't ever really truly wanted to do anything. Back when Trump was in office, they couldn't even give him $5 billion to complete the wall. And heck, they give $120 billion to the Ukraine, but they can't even secure our own border. So, and that's Republicans that also did not get Trump over the goal line in order to fund that wall. So a horrible, heinous thing has happened to us by this invasion, and it is going to be very, very ugly and disruptive. Well, let's see what Trump wants to do. We can talk about it a little bit hereafter. This is on the Tim Pool podcast.
Young people, surprisingly, immigration is a top issue for them now. I was talking to a young guy, he's 26. He says he's watching what's going on in New York. He owns a business. He can't afford to buy his own house. He struggles to be able to support a family. And I know that you've said that there's going to be the largest deportation effort in your next term. How do we do it?
So millions and millions of people are coming into our country, and it's not necessarily exactly what we want or had in mind. They have open borders where people just flow in. And many of those people are coming from prisons. Many of those people, frankly, are murderers and they're drug dealers. And they're coming from mental institutions. And they're coming from places that are not going to work very well. It's not going to be very good for our country. So we're going to start with that, and we have to get them out. No country can sustain what we're going through. I believe the number is 15, 16 million, could even be 17 million people right
High
now.
number.
And
Is that,
that's more than almost, that's bigger than almost all of our states.
I think it's freaking out young people. Do we, how do we do it though? I mean, is it going to be new personnel? Do we,
It will really be done with local police. You know, the respect has been taken away. The honor has been taken away from our police forces. They're not allowed to do anything. And whether it's libertarian or not libertarian, people have to have, you have to have law and order. You can't have 500 people walking into a department store and just walking out with everything they have. And we have to give honor and respect back. And I believe immunity, because, you know, so often when a police person does their job, they end up with no pension. They end up with no house. They end up with no family. Everything's taken away from them. They have to get their own lawyer. So we're going to give them back their dignity and their strength. The local police know the criminals that we're talking about. They know their first name, their middle name, and their last name. They know everything about them. And we're going to have to let them do that. And they will bring them in. We have no choice. And these are in many cases, and this is from all over the world, not just South America, which is big enough, but they're coming in from the Congo. They're coming in from all parts of Africa. They're coming in from all parts of Asia. And it's an invasion into our country, and no country can handle this. So we're going to have them taken out. Local police, we're going to work very closely with the local police, and it's been done before. We had Dwight Eisenhower, believe it or not, did the biggest deportation. He pretty much stopped it. Strange that we mentioned Eisenhower because you don't think of him that way, but he did a massive deportation where people were pouring in.
Yeah. So what Trump is saying is that he is going to deport in mass these millions of people, and it's going to get ugly to local economies. Socially, it is. But I can tell you that if Trump does come up with a great game plan where it's one of being serious about removing these individuals, regardless of age or where you came from, I would absolutely join with him at the county level as a chief law enforcement officer of the county. I would deputize competent individuals, former law enforcement, former military, that could assist the federal government in rounding up and deporting people out of this county. Now, I had a recent video that we placed on Instagram and Facebook and others, and there were people that were really upset because I called them invaders. They were upset because I used the word hunt them down. I don't know what else you call it. If you're out looking for somebody and you have to find them, I don't know what else you call it, but yes, hunting individuals down that are here illegally. They are lawbreakers. And in a humane way, because the deputies that will be working and assisting me will definitely have a standard and a requirement if we do if we assist the Trump administration to humanely help escort these people out of our area so that we can maintain the rule of law, which the rest of us have to adhere to, and hopefully correct this problem. Now, remember, folks, that we have seen ourselves, Donna and I, in just one day, hundreds of military-aged males that were here unaccompanied, so-called asylum seekers. But I am telling you from my experience and training, they were definitely not asylum seekers. These are warriors. Those are intermixed in this group that we have to deport. And it's not just mothers with children and families that are looking for a better life. So understand that Dan Wilson has publicly committed to assisting President Trump's call to help him with this huge issue. And I believe many of you out there who have these skill sets that are good, reasonable men that have and women that have served honorably in your country to some degree, whether it's military and or law enforcement, that you will join with me in assisting us, because we must secure our borders. I think it used to be said, language, border, and culture is what makes a nation a nation. So
that does relate locally. To continue on this local arena, and maybe to shed some light on why possibly Bob Norris, who's our current sheriff, hasn't spent the time securing the county.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe shed some light on some other things that he has been busy on, maybe some of the other people that he's tied with, or who has?
I tell everybody, always look where the money's coming from. Now, Bob Norris this year alone is close to $80,000 in contributions. And it's great because you can go to the Secretary of State for Idaho, and I think it's sos/idaho.gov. And you can go to the campaign portal. And this great dashboard allows you to drill in by candidate to see who's donating money to these candidates. And there's a really great feature, which it allows you to separate local from outside of the state. And as I was looking at some of the most recent contributions, I thought a few things were interesting. I don't know if you have that PDF that I sent, but I just wanted to show you and encourage all of you, for me included, go do your due diligence, find out who is giving money to whom and what they're spending money on, myself included. Now, this little PDF here that I've pulled up highlights a couple of very interesting donors. Very first one we're going to look at is a husband and wife, Jason and Shayna Vedati. They gave on May 23rd, which was 2 days after our primary. They each gave a maximum $1,000 donation. Well, I got to thinking, why would a presumed husband and wife team from out of the area give maximum donations to Bob? I'll get to that in just a second here, but we also have some other interesting people that gave money within the past month. Peter Gamby, you guys can look him up. When these contribution reports come out, you can actually confirm via addresses as to if these individuals actually that we're talking about are tied in to the individual that lives where we believe they live based on the data. But you have Peter Gamby that gave $1,000 both for the primary, and then a month later he gave $1,000 for the general election. Now, he was banking really big that Bob was going to win because he gave to the general election before the primary. You also have Brandon Main from Nevada, and Don Ahern, who's a very wealthy individual from Nevada as well. He owns, I believe, Ahern Casino in Las Vegas, Ahern Rentals, which was bought out, I believe, by United Rentals. He owns a major share in snorkel lifts. He's got some dealings here locally. I believe he's one of the $100,000 donors and possible pilot of the Kootenai County Regional Air Support Chopper.
If you're just joining us, I want to interrupt, because if you are just joining us, we've had a bunch of you hopping on Instagram. Dan's going through some of the out-of-state or large donors to the Bob Norris campaign.
Yeah. So look, our team is already going through these with a more fine-tooth comb. I welcome all of you to do the same. Part of keeping a republic, folks, is by making certain that the money that's flowing in truly represents the people. I mean, why is a county sheriff getting money from big donors outside? Now, look, we're going to do just a little bit of diving into Bob Norris, who claims that he is for responsible growth or smart growth, and
I think it's be careful.
His special deputy,
responsible growth.
His special deputy, former campaign manager, special deputy, and newest county commissioner, Bruce Matari from Washington, D.C. origin. They both received $1,000 maximum contributions. Remember, they're both unresponsible growth. And once you know that Jason Vedati, I don't know if we've got that website, he's a real estate developer, Washington, I believe Arizona, but where it gets really interesting. Jason is in the cannabis business. Now, here's a website where we were able to source Mr. Jason Vedati's vision for the cannabis market's future. And yes, this is the same Jason, I'm absolutely positive, that just gave he and his wife, the presumed wife, $1,000 maximum contributions to Bob in the primary, which means they can still give another $1,000 each for the general election. But look, this guy is banking on the fact he's been involved with cannabis and distribution in Washington State. And if you scroll down a little bit right before the vehicle, he actually says that he is actively looking for new markets. My question is there a push in Idaho to legalize cannabis? And is our Mr. Law and Order from Los Angeles Sheriff's Department and Bruce Matari from Washington, D.C., disguising the fact that they are actually looking to partner with developers?
Where does it, do you remember where that part was?
Let's see if I can go down
Right
there.
on.
Let's see. Yeah, it's right there. So he says he's also scoping out new markets and looking for ripe new ground to expound his operations. So is Bruce and Bob conning all of us when they say that they're for responsible growth? Then why are they taking money from guys that are bragging that they are real estate developers and in the cannabis? Now, let's go to the next website by donor Brandon Main. And Brandon Main out of Nevada also happens to be into real estate and development. And he is also in the cannabis market. So let's see if we can pull that one.
I'm not sure if I have that.
That would have been, okay. Well, we'll pull that one up, I guess, later. My mistake for not getting you the proper link.
Oh, I'm getting it.
But yeah, so we have Brandon Main, who also gave $1,000 back in March to Norris. And he also is into cannabis. So, hey, Bob, we're kind of curious, and I'm certain that Special Deputy Matari would be interested in this. He also received $1,000 donation from Jason, his last time running. So, look, folks, do not believe what people are saying when they're running their mouths. Always verify. Verify everything that I say as well. I'm happy to always produce exactly the sources for everything that I have to say and be able to defend why I'm saying it. But everyone, you should never, ever trust your elected officials without verifying that what they're saying is the truth. Don't ever get lazy and acquiesce that responsibility because it's easier to do something else, something entertaining. So yeah, these guys are definitely, really concerned about responsible growth. And we haven't even gone through all the names. And there's a lot more names to come. The great tab now that the Secretary of State added is these out-of-state contributions. And look, let's start all of us being good citizens and vetting these things out, including, don't forget, the Deputy Sheriff's Association, which is the Kootenai County Deputy Sheriff's Association, and more specifically, their Political Action Committee, because we know that they played a pretty heavy hand, thousands of dollars, supporting candidates that were not endorsed by the KCRCC. In fact, they were anti-KCRCC candidates, and they also helped promote a bunch of North Idaho Republican candidates for PCs. So last I heard, Brent Reagan was able to retain his chairmanship of the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee, but it was almost, it was tight. I think it was within 4 votes. So
I think he was admitting it was not a comfortable lead.
Yeah. And I have heard that there are a lot of KCRCC PCs and others that are extremely ticked off with Bob and with Bruce and the FOP for the shenanigans that they were involved with when they were, promoting that knucklehead Brett Surplus.
Let's come back and talk about the shenanigans. The previous discussion led to an interesting question from a viewer on Instagram. Are you against cannabis becoming legal in Idaho?
I'm going to be honest and say that I'm struggling with this because I've lived through Washington legalizing it. There's pros and cons. I think that drugs in general are bad for our communities. People will say all the time that there's no harm with cannabis, but I would argue and say that I don't entirely buy that. I've had my own contacts with it, and so I also realize that as a culture, we're kind of losing this war. And Washington has legalized it, and as part of legalizing it. I've seen an increase in dereliction and other behaviors. I can't tell you how many times that I would stop a vehicle and somebody would say, I don't have the money to pay for my insurance or the tabs, but they always had pot in their vehicle. So I don't know. I, as a general rule, am not for it, but I am attempting to keep my mind open and I guess reconcile it with my belief to life, liberty, and property. So probably lose a whole bunch of voters over that. But I'm being honest. I've always told you folks that I'm being honest, and it's something that I have struggled with a lot.
But what would you have to do with whether, what does the sheriff have to do, or do they have anything to do with whether or not that marijuana?
Well, I think the
legalized?
sheriff has a great voice because as the chief law enforcement officer of the county, who, again, the whole reason that you have a sheriff's office, the whole reason you have police is to make certain that people's rights are secure to life, liberty, and property. And let's face it, with drugs comes crime, and so does with drinking. I mean, it's not like that drinking doesn't have its own crimes that occur against people as well. But I'm definitely, absolutely 100%, 110% against all the other drugs. I'm against, obviously, the fentanyl crisis. I'm against crack. I'm against meth, prescription meds that are used on the street. But, the cannabis thing is more of a difficult conversation. And, as I'm getting older, I'm starting to, again, self-examine and evaluate. But I think that it's important as sheriff for you to operate and inform not only your county commissioners, but also the state legislators, what you're seeing, what has happened as a result of, crimes that are committed or things that have to do with the use of pot. And I think those are important stats. Now, I don't believe that we should be locking up every kid that smokes a joint. I think that the war on drugs has been an absolute failure. I think that we were set up from the beginning. I don't think that we were ever going to win that, especially when they're pouring it in. Whether, look, I'm an old Reagan guy, but the Iran-Contra affairs deal was pretty messed up. And I just, in hindsight now, I'm looking back at the drug war in general, and I think it's an abysmal failure. We got civil asset forfeiture of it, which is a complete violation of your constitutional rights. So, yeah, I've got a lot of problems with it, and it's probably a little bit more long-winded than should have been. But I think that a sheriff absolutely should have a say advising people as law and order what he's facing and what the impacts of all these substances are.
We just got a comment that the sheriff can say no to a dispensary license in California and Nevada, in those two states.
Good to know. I did not know that.
Little education for me there on that one.
Thank you very much for that.
If cannabis were to become legalized in Idaho, as a sheriff, would you be prejudicial to in traffic stops, or how would you handle that? Because if you've made your stance pretty clear, then how do you and your department operate?
It's the same thing, equal protection under the law. I mean, I did this in real time in Washington State. And, I always thought it was funny in Washington State, because I'm a cigar smoker, no shock there. But so in the states of California and Oregon, they have some, extensive anti-smoking laws, but yet they allow cigar lounges. And in the state of Washington, when they passed their I guess it was a petition, referendum, I forget what you call it, but the people voted on not allowing any smoke in any building and 25 feet from an opening back around 2008, 2009. You couldn't even have a cigar lounge. Now, Oregon and California still allow cigar lounges, but the state of Washington said it is so important that people not be exposed to secondhand smoke that we're not going to allow it anywhere unless you happen to be on a reservation, because that's federal land, and then apparently you can work there and no problem. But yeah. I digress. So why is it that a few short years later, the same people through a referendum approve pot? Now, I read through the proposed legislation that people are voting on, and to talk about how bipolar people in Washington State were at that time, and there's a point to this, they were not concerned at all with children being recipients of secondhand smoke from marijuana. Now get this. You as an adult, a consenting adult, can't even go and work at a cigar lounge nor attend a cigar lounge in Washington state because of the effects of secondhand smoke. But yet the same people also think it's okay for you to smoke marijuana, and there's no consequences from back in those days exposing a child or other people to that secondhand smoke. Now, overall, I think that what we need to be concerned with is what happened in Washington. People don't read the laws. They don't understand that in Washington state, you're only supposed to do it in private residence, not in your vehicle, not in public open places. And they kept pushing the laws so much to the point where after a while, we really weren't enforcing it. We saw somebody smoking a joint out in public. You go in there and warn them, but there was no real consequences. So again, be careful what you wish for. You and I have gone to hotels that we have to immediately check out of because, the entire place smells like pot. And,
It's like, we get it. Everybody's smoking pot.
I'm a cigar smoker, so it's not like I'm anti-smoke, but.
We're going to squeeze in one more question. We are at exactly an hour now, so I'm going to squeeze in one more question and then let you leave us with a good word. What do you think about the inappropriate books that are showing up in libraries? This has been a hot topic over the last couple of years.
The inappropriate books, I'm going to guess by that question, you're talking about pornographic material of whatever, status you want to call it. So if a child under 18 is being allowed to access what we consider to be pornographic or sexual content in nature, I don't believe that should be allowed. I don't believe that children, we must protect our minors. As a father of 5, and I have a grandchild, I'm absolutely adamant about protecting my children against all sorts of threats, to include pornographic materials. It's straight out of the pit of hell, in my personal opinion. That being said, the sheriff cannot unilaterally go in and start seizing books. And this has been asked of me numerous times. The sheriff still has to operate within the confines of the law. And it is the state of Idaho that allows these materials to be seen by children and or the local library boards. So this fight has to be fought by the citizens. The sheriff can't just physically come in and start arbitrarily deciding what is acceptable and what is not acceptable to him. Of course, if a crime is being committed and that can be proven through a complaint and an investigation, then obviously people will be charged accordingly and held accountable. But no, I mean, I think right now it's to get votes. If you are running as a sheriff and say, well, I'm going to go in and steal library books and make certain that your children aren't exposed. Look, our kids can access stuff right now. How many of you are watching what your kids are viewing? So some of that's a little bit of political theater in my opinion.
We broadcast live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. If you want to get automatic reminders, because we all live busy lives, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's the Idaho Sheriff, very easy to find. You'll get an automatic notice when we do go live next Wednesday night. And all the other good information you can find on our website at theidahosheriff.com. Also, our next live event, live town hall that we have coming up is
Saturday. And I'm gonna have to actually read this because I think Jen texted me and said I got some of this wrong. So I'm gonna go down it. We have a private event on Friday, which that's not published yet. Saturday, June 8th, 9 a.m. We have a town hall at the Spirit Lake Senior Center in Spirit Lake, Idaho. So if you're in the Athol area or in Spirit Lake, come out and see us. I will be a guest on the Nino's Corner podcast. It is at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, 10:30 Mountain Standard Time, Sunday, the 9th. So this coming Sunday, 9:30 local time. If you subscribe to Nino, you will probably see us. If not, we are going to rebroadcast it for those that might be in church or not up that early. I will be at the Coeur d'Alene Cruise on the 14th. And there's also a town hall in Athol on, I believe it's Saturday, June 22nd. And I'm going to forget the time. Jen, sorry about that. I thought I had it written down, but
Both of those events are on the Idaho Sheriff Facebook page, which is another great one for you to join, because we oftentimes have spirited discussions and debates on the Idaho Sheriff Facebook page, and would love for you to follow the page, get those notifications, and join in. Leave your thoughts, comments, and opinions.
I'm Dan Rathering right now, but yes, please sign up. If you go to the idahosheriff.com, join my campaign posse. We need lots of volunteers for sign waving, passing out signs, helping with events. We'd love to have you there. Don't forget, we have merchandise as well. Now, all that, I'm done with the whole trying to be a car salesman. I do want to talk to you about this, and that is liberty without compromise must be of the utmost importance to all of us. Because the fact that we are sitting here right now talking with you and you are watching us means that we live in a time where we still can do things that we want to do. And most of us are struggling, but things aren't really, really bad yet. And I pray that they don't get really, really bad. I pray that God divinely comes in and helps us sort this mess out before we get a real lesson taught to us. But we cannot live our lives without being prepared. And Kootenai County in the past 4 years has done nothing to get prepared, to get our community prepared for natural events or man-made events. Maybe one of these terrorists that are here might do something even here in Kootenai County. But there will be a plan of action, and Dan Wilson is going to help secure this county, bringing in a whole multitude of people with various backgrounds and expertise. We are going to most likely head into hard times, but do not fear. Do not be discouraged. In fact, be strong and of good courage, because we didn't descend from fearful men. We descended from men who were brave and understood the times, and they acted with great action and purpose, and they pledged their lives, their fortunes for the sacred honor. You too pledge your sacred honor in respect of those men and women that paid the price before us. God bless you. May God bless Kootenai County, and may God bless America. Good night.